as you heard. I'm a member, a founder of the First Amendment Church of True Science. I have a church. We meet every new moon, and I would encourage you to sign up. You can do this too. We just basically ask you to, it's for people who don't believe in God, who specifically deny there's a God. If you embrace the 3 suggestions, 1, question everything, 2, be honest, and 3, do what's right. If you embrace those 3 suggestions, you will be a Grand Quavaki. And I'll tell you the story of what the Quavaki. And if you're a Grand Quavaki, you can enjoy all the benefits of being a Grand Quavaki in the First Amendment Church of True Science. And we meet, as I said, and we have a free thing drink. And we encourage people to go to the farmer's market and taste the vegetables and taste the fruits that they're going to use in the free thing drink to make sure they're sweet and they're delicious. But you can't do that in farmer's markets because no farmer's market will take a check or a credit card. And we refuse to take money that says, "In God we trust," to use for our church that denies the existence of God. This is sacrilege. We pass a plate around. We pass a plate at our meetings. We take money. So far, I've gotten 1 bill that had "In God We Trust" cut off of it, and I haven't been able to use it, spending it. Nobody else can put any money, because it's sacrilege to take money that says "In God We Trust" in our church. What is this? Can you imagine telling a Jew, "Hey, you got to wear a cross every time you come to church"? Or a Christian, you got to take a star and crescent every time you want to worship? Outrageous. So we can't do that. We have free think garb. We wear this special garb. We recommend you go to thrift stores and get it and spend the money that you'd have otherwise and use it for the church so that we can do some charitable activities. Well, a lot of thrift stores don't take credit cards or checks, and some that do have minimums, and we like you to spend nothing on this stuff, so we can't get our garb. I was in Boston. I was giving a talk a couple months ago. I wanted to go to the Harvard Divinity School to go look some stuff up there. You can't park. I can't park. The only place to park, I went to the park. I couldn't go. Exercise rights. Congress says, any interference, you need a compelling state interest. Tell me what the compelling interest is to put "In God We Trust" in our coins or currency, especially when your defense of it in the Establishment Clause arena is that it doesn't mean anything, it's not important. Okay? I don't know. You guys seem to have a problem with this. So that's the case that I brought. I just lost in the district court. Yes. So now I'm the appellant. I get the first brief. I get the last brief. I get everything. The judge says that he feels compelled. Remember the precedent issue. This case was already decided in the Ninth Circuit. There's a case called Aronow, and the Supreme Court, the Ninth Circuit came up and said that this has nothing whatsoever to do with an establishment of religion. They don't say why it has nothing to do with it. They just say this thing that says "In God We Trust." Sounds like it has something to do with religion, at least. Has nothing whatsoever. So he said, well, that's what they said, so I'm going to throw this out to the guy you lose. So I don't think they have a very good reason, and he didn't really rule on the RFRA claim at all. So even if I lose on the Establishment Clause grounds, I think I have a great RFRA claim. I don't know how to get out of this. It's a great case. Yes?
Are you saying that you don't use American currency at all?
Not for my church, absolutely not. I do it, I have to. How do you get around it?
Personally, you do.
I do, I have to, yeah. But I object to it. And that's a violation of my things. Sometimes I don't, but certainly not for my church. Okay, so that's where we are. Let me give you one more thing here, and then I'll let you go. Let's get along. I don't want to wait too long. This is just so you have some idea. One of the tests that the Supreme Court uses to determine whether or not something is a violation of the Establishment Clause is you have to look and see whether or not it was done for a religious purpose. And one of the nice things about Congress, thank you again, is that the Supreme Court didn't come out with this idea that you can't do things for a religious purpose until 1971, in a case called Lemon v. Kurtzman. So this idea of having a religious purpose was okay. Nobody knew that you couldn't say we're doing this for a religious purpose. So back before 1971, Congress and everybody else was honest. They said what they were doing. They said, we're doing this for religious purposes. They didn't know. Now they don't. Now they're very careful to say, no, this isn't for religion. It's because it's our history or it's patriotic or some other nonsense. But back then they didn't have to do that because they didn't realize that was a test. And when you read RFRA, by the way, it specifically says, go back in history. We're not starting from now. We're starting all the way from back. So even if we're talking about laws that were passed a long time ago, it still is incorporated into this RFRA claim. And they specifically put it in there. So good. So let me give you some history of "In God We Trust" and how we got this on our coins and currency. It started during the Civil War era. And as I may have mentioned, I think I said before, the Treasury Department on their website, they said it was because of the religious fervor. That's still on the website now, of the Civil War time. And there was a letter written to the Secretary of the Treasury, Salmon P. Chase. The letter was written by Mark Richard Watkinson, a minister of the gospel from Ridleyville, Pennsylvania. And he writes, I'll give you some of this stuff. He says, you are probably a Christian, he says to Salmon P. Chase. just in case you think they might not have something to do with religion, because they say this is what the recognition of Almighty God should be placed on the nation's coins. It says this is to relieve us from the ignominy of heathenism, i.e. not believing in God, and place us under divine protection. From my heart I have felt our national shame in disavowing God as not the least of our present national disasters. So it sounds to me like they really were talking about worshiping God. They weren't talking about history or anything. They're talking about worshiping God, and they were using the phrase, in God we trust. Anyone have trouble with thinking of that as being religious? It sounds kind of religious to me. Okay, so a week later, Samuel P. Chase writes to James Pollock, who's the director of the Mint, and he says, no nation can be strong except in the strength of God, or safe except in his defense. The trust of our people in God should be declared on our national coins. Sounds to me religious. Remember, the Supreme Court is going to come up in 100 years with a test that says, if you do it for religious purposes, it's not allowed. It's a violation of the Establishment Clause. Okay, so James Pollock, he's the director of the Mint, he gets the idea, okay, we got to do this. By the way, James Pollock was a member of the NRA, which wasn't the National Rifle Association back then. It was the National Reform Association, which still exists to this day. And their goal in life, ever since they came into being, was to get the United States declared a Christian nation, to change our preamble to say we're here in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and all this other stuff. And that's what they did. They still want to do that. Well, James Pollock was one of the members of the originators of the National Reform Association. And so he comes up with his report as the director of the Mint. This is his official report, talking about this idea with this motto. I would respectfully and earnestly ask the attention of the department to the proposition of my former report, and I haven't been able to get that one yet, but I assume it was in 1862, to introduce a motto upon our coins expressive of a national reliance on divine protection and a distinct and unequivocal national recognition of the divine sovereignty. Sound religious to you guys? We claim to be a Christian nation. Why should we not vindicate our character by honoring the God of nations in the exercise of our political sovereignty as a nation? This is the director of the United States Mint talking in his annual report. Our national coinage should do this. Its legends and devices should declare our trust in God, in Him who is King of kings and Lord of lords. I think that's Jesus Christ. Okay? So this is all the stuff that's going on, and it goes on and on and on. The New York Times covers this. They say this is a new form of national worship. Director Pollock comes up with another report. He says, happy is the nation whose God is the Lord. He sticks that on there. And this thing goes on. Now, in case you think that it's not religious yet, then we get into the early 1900s. In 1906, Roosevelt, as President TR, he decides that he wants to make our coins pretty and magnificent like the coins of old, like the Greeks. And we have these coins that don't do much. So he gets this guy, Augustus St. Gaudens, who is a renowned sculptor. He says, can you make a new coin? And they look in the laws, and there's no requirement for In God We Trust. It started in 1864 with Samuel P. Chase and James Pollock. The first coin was a 2-cent coin in 1864. And they added it to a bunch of coins. And so it was pretty common on all the coins back then. Not all the coins, on most of the coins. But in 1907, they look at the laws, and there's nothing that requires them to have In God We Trust. So St. Gaudens, the sculptor, says, let's get this thing off, because it gets in the way. I want to make a beautiful coin. I don't want these stupid words here. So Roosevelt says, great idea. I don't like the idea that we have these words in God we trust anyhow, because people keep making jokes. You handle this stuff. This is sacrilegious in itself. He says, the joke, in God we trust, all of this, pay cash, that kind of stuff. He says, nobody ever looks at this and says it's really nice and then, holy. Let's get it off our coins. And he says, I think the people of the United States will be behind me on this. So they come out with a coin, and it's a 1907 St. Gaudens $20 gold piece, and you can buy them today. And there's no sense. So there's no In God we trust. Well, the nation erupts in this huge furor. Kind of like with the pledge case. Everyone goes crazy. Wow, in God we trust. This is terribly important. Oh, but it's not religious. But it's really important. But they, back then, are saying it is religious, and they all admit that. And Congress goes berserk, and they say, oh, we can't have this. And they pass a law that says, okay, you do have to have it, but not on all coins. On all the coins that it's been to date, you have to have In God we trust on the coins. And I'll just mention that in the House report that came along with this new bill that says you do have to have it, now mandates it. That's the first time it was ever mandatory on our coins. They said, the reverent and religious conviction which underlies American citizenship, a Christian nation needing a Christian patriotism which recognizes the universal fatherhood of God. That's what they were thinking when they wanted to make sure that we have In God we trust on our coins and currency. So, does that sound religious to you guys? Have I gotten to anything yet that doesn't sound purely religious on what they're doing? Remember, there's a religious purpose to this stuff. It's unconstitutional.